I never thought the day would come when I would have to become a spy in my own home, plotting an escape not from a kidnapper, but from the man who was supposed to be my family. Looking back now, after everything that happened, after the evidence was presented and the gavel fell, the only question that truly matters is this: was I wrong to manipulate the people closest to me and lie through my teeth for nearly a year, all just to ensure my stepfather, Richard, finally got what he deserved? Tell me if your safety, your future, and your entire peace of mind depended on it. Would you have chosen to play the long game, even if it meant sacrificing every ounce of trust you had left? My story begins long before the mission, back when I was just 12 and my mom married Richard. He seemed charming enough then, a successful real estate agent, always impeccably dressed, with a laugh that could fill a room. He was the complete package, the kind of man my single mother had always dreamed of. For the first few years, everything was picture perfect. He was generous, took us on great vacations, and for the first time, our house felt stable. But the mask, as they always do, eventually started to slip, and when it did, it wasn't a gentle slide. It was a violent tear. The change was slow and insidious, starting after I turned 15. It wasn't physical violence, not at first. It was control, absolute, suffocating control. He started with my academics, insisting I study only what he deemed profitable, essentially forcing me to choose a pre-med track, despite my passion for art history. Then came the money. He managed everything. My part-time job earnings meant for college savings were suddenly being managed by him, supposedly for better investments, but I never saw any of the statements. The worst part was the way he treated my mother. It wasn't outright abuse, but it was psychological warfare. He'd gaslight her constantly, making her second guess every decision she made, slowly eroding her self-confidence until she was this fragile shell of the vibrant woman I remembered. If she dared to push back on anything, even something as simple as wanting to visit her sister, he'd turn stone cold, giving her the silent treatment for days, making the atmosphere in the house so thick with tension you could practically choke on it. I tried to talk to her to warn her, but she was so deep under his influence, so scared of losing the stability he provided, that she would always defend him, saying things like, "He's just stressed, honey. He just wants the best for us." That's when I realized no one was coming to save us. If justice was to be served, I had to serve it myself. The idea for the mission, as I started calling it in my head, solidified the day Richard intercepted a letter from my dream university, a small college with a phenomenal art history program. He had literally thrown it in the shredder before I could even read it, sneering, "Waste of time and money. You're applying to state schools for biology. End of discussion." That act of pure, casual destruction of my future was the breaking point. I decided I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to expose him for the controlling, financial predator he was. My target became his darkest secret. I suspected he was skimming money from his real estate clients and maybe even from my college fund. I needed proof, solid proof that would stand up in court. My first step was establishing an undetectable communication line. I bought a cheap burner phone with cash, kept it hidden in a hollowed out book, and used it only on public Wi-Fi networks in the library. This was my lifeline to the outside world. My next step was building my spy toolkit. I downloaded a sophisticated, low-profile voice recording app on my own phone and activated automatic backup to a hidden cloud drive. I knew he checked my main phone periodically, so I had to be flawless. I started leaving my phone near the kitchen where he often took private business calls, always accidentally leaving the volume low so he wouldn't notice a slight vibration or sound if I remotely activated the recording. I became an expert at feigning disinterest. I'd sit in the living room, supposedly engrossed in a textbook, while secretly recording his every conversation, every instruction to his assistant. I had to learn his patterns when he worked late, when he was distracted, and crucially, where he kept his important documents. The breakthrough came a month later. Richard had a small, locked safe bolted to the floor underneath his home office rug. It was one of those old-school safes with a dial combination, which I knew he was fiercely protective of. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen just as he was on the phone with his business partner. He was agitated, pacing, and muttered, "I need to put these records away. Better make sure the combo is secure, *4-5-8-1-2-9*." Yes, that's right. I memorized the sequence instantly, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. That was the first piece of the puzzle. The second, and the most difficult piece, was getting access without him noticing. I waited 2 more weeks, building his confidence, being the perfect, obedient student. Then, on a Saturday afternoon, my mom and Richard left for an all-day charity event. This was my window. I worked quickly, moving the heavy rug, dialing the combination exactly as I'd heard it. The tumblers clicked, and the heavy door swung open. Inside were stacks of files, bank statements, and a meticulously organized ledger. It was all there: double books, shell companies, and clear evidence of systematic fraud, including a paper trail showing he'd diverted $40,000 from the account my mom thought was my college fund into one of his own private investment portfolios. The sheer audacity, the cold calculation of it all, made me sick to my stomach. I spent the next hour photographing every single document, every single page of the ledger, saving the images to a separate, encrypted USB drive I kept hidden in the lining of my backpack. I reset the safe, replaced the rug, and when they came home, I was innocently watching a documentary, My Secret Safe and Sound. The next few months were a terrifying tightrope walk. I was sitting on a mountain of evidence that could destroy my life if discovered, but I couldn't move too fast. I needed to solidify my exit plan. I secretly applied to that small art history college again, using my aunt's address in another state for all correspondence. I got accepted, and the feeling of that acceptance letter in my hand, delivered to a P.O. box I'd opened, was the first true breath of freedom I'd taken in years. But I wasn't leaving without ensuring justice. I contacted a lawyer my aunt knew, a specialist in financial fraud, through my burner phone, and set up an anonymous consultation, forwarding the first batch of documents. The lawyer confirmed my fears. This was a serious case of fraud and embezzlement, but they needed more. They needed an official witness and the original safe contents secured by law enforcement, or at least a live recording of Richard admitting guilt. This meant I had to stay, and I had to push him into a corner. So that's the situation I was in. I had enough evidence to start the process, but not enough to guarantee a conviction and keep my mother safe from his retribution. I was 18, staring down a man who was financially and psychologically dominating my mother, and had stolen my future. Before I tell you about the final, risky move I made, the one that broke everything apart, I want you to pause right here. Look at the cards I was holding: a mountain of fear, a burning desire for justice, and a secret USB drive full of criminal evidence. What would you have done? Would you have just taken the evidence and run? Or would you have stayed and tried to secure the final, incriminating piece of the puzzle, knowing you could go down with the ship? Comment below and tell me what you would have done in my shoes, because what happened next was pure desperation. The final phase began with a confrontation, a manufactured one. I had to make him feel secure, cocky, and then deliver the blow. I walked into his office one evening, phone in my back pocket recording, and feigned complete devastation. I started crying, saying, "Richard, I got an email from the university. They said there was an issue with the transfer of my college savings account. The number is wrong, and they said there isn't enough money. What's going on?" I played the role of the terrified, naive stepdaughter perfectly. He was initially annoyed, but then a slow, terrible smile spread across his face. He leaned back in his chair, folding his hands over his stomach, and he started to brag. That's what control freaks do when they think they've won. He saw me as a pawn, and he couldn't resist showing off how powerful he was. "What's going on, sweetie? What's going on is that I'm taking care of your future," he sneered. "That money, it's where it belongs working for me. You think I was going to let you throw away $40,000 on some frivolous art degree? No, I'm moving it, restructuring it. You will go to a state school for pre-med, and you will thank me for the opportunity later. As for the rest of that safe, those are my business dealings, and they are none of your concern. I own this house. I pay the bills, and I make the decisions. Now, get out and go study. Don't mention this again, or I'll make sure you don't even get that state school scholarship." The arrogance in his voice was chilling, but it was exactly what I needed. The admission was clear, recorded, and backed up by the documents. I left the room, my body shaking, but inside I was flooded with a terrifying sense of triumph. That same night, I packed a small bag. The USB drive, the burner phone, and my vital documents were all secured. I wrote a long, detailed letter to my mother, explaining everything: the fraud, the stolen money, the psychological abuse, and the recordings. I begged her to trust me and to call the number on the top of the letter, the number for my lawyer. I told her I couldn't stay because I knew he would try to stop me and erase the evidence. I left the letter on her pillow, kissed her good-bye as she slept, and walked out the door into the cold night. I didn't look back. I took a pre-booked bus to my aunt's house 3 states away, a journey that felt like a lifetime. When the dust finally settled, it was a mess of epic proportions. My mother, initially devastated and furious at me for leaving and lying, eventually called the lawyer. She listened to the recordings I'd sent to him. She looked at the bank statements, and the full weight of Richard's manipulation finally hit her. She realized the depth of his betrayal. She filed for divorce immediately and cooperated fully with the fraud investigation, which by then involved the police due to the scale of his embezzlement from clients. Richard was arrested at his office less than a month after I left. The charges were extensive: multiple counts of wire fraud, grand larceny, and embezzlement. He tried to fight it, but the recordings of his confession and the meticulously organized paper trail from his safe were undeniable. He was convicted 6 months later and sentenced to several years in federal prison. My mother, armed with the evidence I'd gathered, was able to secure a very favorable divorce settlement, essentially proving his assets were ill-gotten and protecting her from financial ruin. She got the house and a fresh start, though the emotional scars remained. As for me, I'm now a sophomore, finally studying art history in a place where I feel safe and genuinely loved. The mission was successful, but it cost me a piece of my innocence and forced me to become someone I never wanted to be, a master manipulator. I did what I had to do, though, not just for my future, but for my mother's freedom. It was a terrible, difficult period of my life, but I learned a crucial truth. Sometimes the only way to escape a powerful captor is to become smarter, colder, and more ruthless than they are. The lie I lived was a bitter pill, but the justice it bought was the sweetest reward. I wouldn't change a thing. If you've ever felt trapped, remember that you have the power to observe, to plan, and to escape. Like this video if you were on my side and believe I made the right call by playing the long, dangerous game. Subscribe for more stories like this, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Did I go too far, or was it the only way? I'll see you all in the next story.